Perfect. Rory, so why don't we kick it off with a little introduction? Tell us about yourself and Trumpet.
Cool, we'll do. Great to be here. Thanks everyone for giving up your lunchtime to listen to me ramble on. So I'm Rory, one of the co-founders here at Trumpet. We built Trumpet to make buying journeys a lot easier. We think buying software is broken. We do that with the concepts of microsites. We call them pods, interactive, collaborative, and automatically personalized spaces that can be spun up in seconds to provide a one-link buyer journey. So we just turned one in December, so still pretty early days, but yeah, and had a busy start to startup life.
All right. Can you just everyone make sure that you are on mute so you don't randomly pop in if you say anything. Okay, Rory, I know you guys raised a pretty significant pre-seed round, especially given the fact that I believe you were pre-launch at the time, but had a sizable wait list. So can you talk to us a little bit about how that round went and what were the main things that investors bought into at that time?
Yeah, there wasn't one single thing. You've got to create a compelling narrative and go with enough conviction to understand what you want out of it. For us, we knew that the product was still being built, so we had to create not only be able to share the vision, but an interesting story that resonated and showed them that this was going to happen, whether they got involved or not. For us, that meant we were busy building a wait list that at the time was around 1,500 salespeople who'd signed up, shown interest in Trumpet. Seniority differed, ICP industries differed, and things like that. And we were able to break that down and share. These weren't just sort of Gmails. There was like basically hot leads sitting, waiting to get access to Trumpet. How did we build that wait list? It wasn't a one-trick pony approach. So we created a sign-up flow on our website, and each week people would get emails about Trumpet. A little bit would be an insight into what we were building, but the rest of it would be, look, early stage startup, typical audience that we were engaging. Here's the tools and insights you need to go and build a sales team, or what a great sales stack looks like, or what selling in 2023 looks like. So we were sharing value-add content weekly, as well as sneak peeks behind the scene of what we were building at Trumpet. GIFs, Loom videos, like super scrappy, nothing expensive. So we did that. We also built a ancillary tool. So part of HubSpot's early success was they had like a free SEO tool. I went and built a list of 300 sales tools, because who doesn't love looking at lists of tools? And that was everything from like sequencing to lead lists to compensation tools to demo recording, you name it. So that list went mini viral in the cool world of sales, putting it into lots of sales communities and Slack channels and things like that. We also were engaging with sales influencers. We're slightly unique. Our audience lives and breathes on LinkedIn. So there's lots of sales influencers. I'm sure you've seen lots of them all over the LinkedIn these days. And we were engaging them, putting them into like top sales people to follow in 2023. They were then resharing that I've been put in this list, go check Trumpet out, that kind of thing. So whilst the product was still this, thing being built, we started to create a little bit of intrigue and FOMO and attention as well. So that was part of it, the wait list. To be really honest, Figma screenshots. So we pulled together about 10 or 12, just showing them the walkthrough of what the product will do. Again, it actually creates a lot of intrigue with investors. Quite unique Trumpet setup for anyone knows. So I'm a first-time founder. I've been in B2B SaaS sales for over 6 years, have lived and breathed the problem that Trumpet is solving. Absolute sales nerd, tried every single piece of software out there. But at the same time, I'm fortunate enough to be working with Nick and Andrew, my co-founders, who are exited founders of a company called Design My Night. That definitely played a big part into us being able to raise the round that we did. There was also research done. So we interviewed over 200 salespeople, 100 end buyers, and turned those insights into basically analytics that investors could review and assess as well, and showing the opportunity ahead. People always say, "Oh, the TAM slide doesn't mean much these days," and it kind of doesn't. But actually, what you're trying to paint in a very quick and coherent picture is there is opportunity here. We have validated it to some degree, and we are, we're the team who are going to achieve that. So I think all of those things together meant that it was a pretty compelling story. And the space we're in, there was a lot of validation as well from archaic, we call them like legacy tools. So yeah.
I won't stick on the fundraising too long, but I'm curious, what was the hardest question that you were asked, and like, what was the biggest point of pushback from investors?
Good question. On the first part, if we go like very specific to our product, a lot of investors said the same thing, which is, do buyers want to be sold to in this way? So trumpet, microsites, one link buyer journey. And they're like, don't they like being sent PDFs? Because we do as investors, that's just how we work. So we came up against that in pretty much every call. That wasn't difficult to navigate, but it was interesting that that was the immediate assumption is, do people want to collaborate, operate in this different environment? Not fortunately, but like part of COVID meant that there is a lot more asynchronous collaboration across different tools, whether it's Figma, Google Docs, Miro, anything like that. So buyers are quite welcoming of being sent new tools, filling out forms, doing X, Y, and Z in there. So it wasn't a difficult one to overcome, but it did come up a lot. And sorry, the second part of the question, do you mind repeating it?
Actually, that was pretty much my my own question. Like, what was it? Yeah, the biggest like hurdle that you had to overcome, or toughest question. Another thing I had a question on was, I saw in one of Nick's LinkedIn posts that you had just over 5 million committed and then closed with 1.6. So is that a sort of ratio that you think founders should plan for?
I mean, as a salesperson, I would say yes. You build your pipeline because you know you're probably going to convert roughly 30%. It's like the industry average. We didn't intentionally go into fundraising knowing that we wanted to overcommit. It sort of happened at the same time, but we knew that we'd be in a much better position and able to not dictate the round, but like come out the other end feeling like we'd not been pressurized and got what we wanted. And yeah, I would say like treat fundraising like a sales process. There is the quantity of meetings that you have to have. There is the research. This is the biggest thing I don't think enough people do, is doing your research. Like in sales, before we go and prospect someone, we make sure they're a right fit. And it's the same with investors. Are they multi-stage fund? Do they invest in your size business? Can you get an intro there to one of their portfolio companies? Who are their portfolio companies? What do they look like? We did so much of that. We also fortunately had lots of inbound interest, just because, you know, Nick and Andrew being exit founders, it created some attention. But at the same time, we knew that like if we built the pipeline, the top of funnel, we would be able to get to the end and have options. We didn't want to be backed into a corner just taking money for the sake of it. And at one point, we didn't need to raise VC. We could have just gone down the angel route, but we were strategic about that decision as well. So you know, I know that sounds a lot easier said than done. It's very difficult raising. It's very difficult overcompensating. I'm not saying that's easy at all, but doing your research, trying to get as many referrals as possible, going after their portfolio companies, asking for intros, and then consolidating all of those meetings into a shorter period of time is my biggest recommendation, because it is so time consuming. You could spend forever raising, and those meetings, you know, goes in from a first to a second to a fifth to a sixth meeting. It can take forever. And you just want to respect your own time as well, because you want to be focused on building the business, especially in like pre-seed and seed. You don't want to be spending months and months and months raising.
That makes sense. I don't think the strategy of sort of over raising or having, you know, 3x the amount that you're planning to raise committed, I don't think that's talked about enough. So that's interesting to touch on. Okay, let's move on to metrics. What's your North Star metric?
Contrary to the startup world, we've decided not to have one. I know they work, and I know Matt Lerner is quite big on North Star metrics, and rightly so. I think for us, just because we're taking both a product-led growth approach, but also traditional outbound sales, we have different metrics for the different approaches to the business. So yes, we're very focused on building a business here, and not just venture backed where we completely rely on VC cash to, you know, get PMF. So everything from MRR, ARR, CAC, NRR are things that we always monitor and work, you know, very, very focused on. But internally, things that we think are super interesting is the average time to create a pod from onboarding. So we call it like the aha moment. That time to value is very, very important. The time to hit 20 pods, which is kind of the pods are our microsites, That's the cap when you then spend your free usage, that conversion from free to paid. So that very much fits into the product-led growth approach of Trumpet. For larger businesses where there is a bit more of a hands-on onboarding experience and everything like that, we're measuring impact. So the time to close deals since using Trumpet, your conversion rates since using Trumpet, and also your team's feedback, qualitative as well. There's so much pressure on quantitative feedback these days. It's always metrics, but actually when it's a very new tool, a new way of working, you need to understand the qualitative side as well. So hopefully that gives you some appreciation as to why we haven't picked a North Star metric as of yet. I'm sure we will one day.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I read for Facebook, their like key target was getting people to have 6 friends, because once they had 6 friends, then they, converted. Uber, I think it was like after 2 rides. And so it seems like, obviously you have to have a bit more data on your business to understand what are those metrics that drive impactful customer behavior in the way that you want to see. But that makes sense. So, sorry, you said what were the numbers you said? CAC, MRR,
ARR, CAC, and then NRR. So net dollar retention. So we're seeing people start with a couple of licenses and then start to add their wider team as time goes on organically, which is great.
How are you tracking those, and how often are you checking in on them and updating your team?
Good question. I'd recommend everyone looking, I think it's June, JUNE.so. Yeah, June.so. So if you know product analytics, you've got the world of like Heap, Mixpanel, Amplitude, and all of them. These guys, they're very, very expensive. They have startup plans. You get your first year free. June is the sort of hot topic, talk of the town at the moment. It's gone super viral, very PLG, very easy to use. You do not need to be a product analytics expert to leverage June. So that would be my recommendation for anyone here who's looking to leverage that kind of data. So for us, we use product analytics. We look at them daily. We're tracking daily. We don't, and we have our sort of monthly retro or monthly all hands where we look back at the last month, look forward at the next month, and decide what milestones we hit, what targets we achieved, and what the next ones are as well. Trumpet is a business built around data, so very, very data centric, and that means daily.
That makes sense. How much are you thinking about those metrics in terms of the narrative or story you want to be able to tell investors when you're raising your seed round?
Yeah, this is an interesting one, and one we always kind of revisit. It goes back to what I said at the start, like, don't raise for the sake of raising, or just because investors are circling around that they say you're the next hot thing and they're really interested. You need to understand why you're raising. So even when we raised that pre-seed round, we could have raised a lot more and we were being offered it, but we had already decided this is our forecast, this is the team we want to build, this is how much we're going to invest in that, and this is the valuation. So we know that we just didn't want to take money for the sake of it. And I think we see that as a very common startups that raise pre-seed. Very soon after, they get investors approaching them for seed, and it's like exciting to be able to take money. That's not success these days, especially in this current climate. It's more difficult than you think to even go out and raise that seed. So my sort of advice to everyone is decide that the story that you want to create and like what the outcome is. So why are you raising that round? What is it going to achieve in terms of runway, team building? Be really, really strict with that, because I think actually if you're able to run a very lean and efficient business that's capital efficient, that's super important, especially in this current climate. So for us, all of the product, at any round, whether it's seed or Series A, your ARR, your NRR are being like looked at. You can't avoid those conversations. For us, we also have other things that we want to achieve. So a certain percentage of customers out in the US, because that is a market that we want to expand into. There's also Trumpet being a product-led growth business. We want to create a viral loop. When you send a Trumpet pod, someone can see powered by Trumpet. If they click on that and sign up, that's a really compelling, a really interesting kind of metric to track, because it basically means £0 CAC. So we have done no marketing. Our product is out in the world kind of selling itself. So if anyone has a tool that can achieve that, really try and analyze that from as early on as possible. So we've got that that sort of time to value of self-serve, and the size of businesses who self-serve versus sales-led and sales outreached. So I think there's lots of different things. It isn't just a revenue milestone, which I think a lot of people think it is. I think really understand your product and whether it is a North Star or certain metrics that set you apart, and show validation, show adoption, show engagement, and also business impact. Not just you're solving a problem, but what is the actual impact? Driving efficiency, driving revenue, saving costs, or reducing risk. These are things that everyone is looking at right now. No fluffy stuff. Like, it's got to have immediate impact. And it always goes back to that saying of no more vitamins. It's got to be a painkiller, that mentality.
Okay, that makes sense. This is a slightly niche question, but I know we have a lot of SaaS startups in the cohort, so it should be relevant to most people. But how large is the cohort essentially of customers? Does it need to be in order for you to get meaningful insight from customer behavior? Because a lot of the startups in our cohort are in super early stage. So at what point are you like, okay, this is just too much of like, we should just focus more on getting more customers before we try to dissect the behavior that we're seeing? Or is it all valuable from the start?
I think, yeah, it's all valuable from the start. I think if you try and overanalyze and overplan, you're just wasting time. I think, like, from 0 to Series A, there's so much scrappiness involved. You know, you can have like the best website in the world and the flashiest UI, but you need to really focus on being scrappy, and it comes down to revenue. It comes down to growth. At the end of the day, it also depends. Like, you could be a SaaS business that sells into enterprise and you need 10 customers and you're straight on to that million ARR mark. Or you could be like us, where we've underpriced our product and we're going down the volume route. We want lots of people using Trumpet, more pods in the world, and that kind of approach. So it really does depend on knowing who your customer is, what your kind of contract value is and can be. And okay, so how many customers do we need to get to X milestone? So I wouldn't be able to say necessarily like how many users or how many customers. It really depends on you knowing your business. But yeah, it's okay to be scrappy. Nothing is going to be perfect pre-Series A, because how can anyone expect it to be? You know, it's a small team, super fast growth in a short period of time. You can only do so much in so many hours of the day, and that's absolutely okay, because that's what Series A is for, is to become, you know, that's where the repeatability comes in, and you're then able to fund that with more team members who can optimize and refine those processes, which inherently up until that point have just been a little bit messy. Okay,
that makes sense. So what you mentioned, that you're obviously your background's in sales, and obviously Trumpet is a sales tool. So I want to dive a little bit into that. What have been the best sales tools that have like delivered you the best ROI, or strategies, I should say?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I actually get asked it a lot, especially founders who, you know, they're very product focused, they're, you know, developer backgrounds and, you know, sales. Like, if I was to suddenly start coding, it'd be terrible for Trumpet. And, you know, it's like learning a new trade overnight is difficult. And it's actually what most founders end up doing, is having to sell. And it's not easy. It isn't fun. And you build a very thick skin very quickly, because resilience is key. So what is the perfect founding sales stack? I always recommend HubSpot. They've got a great startup discount. It does lots of things for that price point as well. So as far as CRMs go, it's pretty comprehensive. And as you mature, it will mature with you. There are other CRMs like Folk, Folk, brilliant. You could even be more scrappy using Airtable or Monday.com, super cheap, and they've got CRM templates. You will grow out of them though. So whereas with HubSpot, you're investing in something for the next 6 years, is the way to see it. It does like sequencing, which is a key part of sales. It does document tracking. It does quotes and proposals and everything. I personally don't think you need to go too far beyond HubSpot. There are millions of sales tools out there, but pre-Series A, it's about being scrappy. To get leads and emails, Apollo.io. It's the cheapest, probably the most accurate in terms of lead scoring, but it's also monthly and flexible, and they've got a startup plan. So this is the approach you want to take with any of these tools: is keep it flexible, stay lean, avoid slides. Slides perform really badly. What I'd recommend actually everyone to do is follow gong.io. Their content is brilliant. It's always data backed. And the thing they'll tell you time and time again is slides really impact conversions of demos. No one likes to be shown slides. They just want to see what you do as quick as possible, understand if there's a fit. It'd be foolish of me not to plug Trumpet here and say everyone should go ahead and check out Trumpet. Fortunately, there is a free plan. No difference between free and paid functionality wise, just how many pods you can send. But we have lots of startups using Trumpet to raise capital, kind of like a data room, share with investors, but also to prospect and create nice personalized buyer journeys. What about Microsoft Dynamics 365? I'm really sorry, Amir. I am the most anti-Microsoft person you'll probably ever meet, so I can't speak for it. I'm sure it's great, but yeah, HubSpot is my bread and butter, the one that I always recommend. So I just saw that pop up there. I know we'll go through questions in a bit, but don't overcomplicate your sales stack early on. The only other thing that I would recommend is something like a Fathom.ai or like a note-taking tool, because notes are super important. You need to do all your discovery of like what tools they're using, why are they looking at this, what piqued their interest, the problems you're solving, the decision makers, their kind of buying journey and procurement process. You need to make sure you log all of that in your CRM. It's so easy to finish a call, go on to the next one and think I've forgotten everything. My real recommendation, if you really want to invest in improving your own sales process, is look at something like gong.io. It's probably too expensive. I'd maybe look at Jiminy instead. So Jiminy is like what we call conversational intelligence. It will record your call and it will give you insights. How fast did you speak? Your talk to listen ratio, which is also super important. It's very easy as founders to just do what I'm doing right now and ramble on and on and on. Instead, most of your calls with prospects should be listening, diving deeper into their answers. So Jiminy is spelled Jiminy. And if you just put in like Jiminy conversational intelligence, what it does is it records your demo, also takes note and tells you how you're performing. It's a worthwhile investment, especially if you're not from a sales background. So just keep it lean. And if you're using any other tools, just let me know and I can give my feedback on them.
That sounds so terrifying, like a really useful tool, but I haven't heard of that before. Okay, talk to me about finding, obviously you had the wait list, but after the wait list, finding the first like 10 to 20 customers, what were the most effective strategies that you used?
Yeah, there's lots of articles and things like that on waitlists. If anyone's doing a waitlist or has done one, you've got to engage them throughout that time, because as soon as they get access, if it's been like 6 months, they'll have churned. They had interest at a certain point in time, and you've got to maintain that. And we experienced that. We took too long to launch our beta. We took too long to give certain people access. What I would say is don't rush and give everyone access at first. The best thing that we did was we took our entire waitlist. We manually enriched that waitlist because it was just emails, like let's just say tom@monzo.com. We uploaded this list into Clearbit. Clearbit's a great tool for what we call data enrichment. Clearbit then told me, here's the company's LinkedIn, here's Tom's LinkedIn, here's how big the company is, revenue, yada, yada. With all that data, we could do something called ICP scoring. That's ideal customer profile. We kept it super simple. Usually ICP scoring is like a formula and it's like 9.65 out of 10. We just bucketed it as low, medium, and high. It didn't mean that someone low was of low value to us. It just meant scoring wise, they were lower. So we might want them to self-serve rather than get a white glove experience. So with that, we phased the onboarding of our waitlist and started with the low ICPs, got their feedback, and then started to move up the funnel. If we instantly gave, someone at Barclays access to Trumpet when we first launched, they'd be like, yeah, great idea, but this thing is too early on for us. And that's just, you get very excited. There's always that saying you should be embarrassed of the first thing that you release, and we definitely were. So yeah, if you've got a wait list, you've got warm leads. So just make sure you're not rushing to give them access straight away. I know you get eager. So there's that side. And then in terms of like fresh customers, I recommend everyone here to leverage the power of social, whether it is TikTok, whether it is LinkedIn, it works. You need to become like a thought leader of your space and not plug your own tool daily and say, this is what we do, we're the best and everything like that. but become like an expert in your field, become that trusted advisor, and that's what salespeople do. We, as a result, get lots of inbound from LinkedIn in particular, just by posting what we call value add content. So for us, it's sales tips, tricks, insights, data, research, resharing, other companies' great posts. People are then like, oh, this guy must know what he's talking about. What does he do? Oh, what does Trumpet do? And then they ping us and say, this looks interesting. Can we have a chat? So it's not easy. I'm not saying just go and become, active on LinkedIn every day. Content creation is a lot more difficult than it sounds, but I'd really recommend it. So, become a sort of trusted advisor of your field.
Okay, that's really good advice. I know Anthony, who's speaking next, who's talked a lot about that, and we'll probably touch on that later today too. But it seemed to be quite effective. Okay, before we go into my next question, we'll move to Q&A shortly. Remember, if you want to ask a question live, just put your hand up. We usually prioritize questions that come in live. So raise your hand if you want to make sure your question gets answered. So Rory, talk to me about measuring product market fit. Of the metrics that you mentioned before, what are the ones for you that indicate that you've hit product market fit?
Yeah. You could spend forever reading articles on PMF, and I feel like there's an argument of you just know in your gut when people love what you've built and you're delivering meaningful value, and it's actually delivering the results that you promised and hoped and anticipated. So for us, it's seeing that we get a good amount of organic referrals, organic upgrades, lots of signups via the Powered by Trumpet. These give us confidence outside of just that MRR or that ARR milestone. But typically people say it is towards that million ARR mark where you start to have PMF, and that's why you raise your Series A, to maintain and continue and improve that repeatability, that repeatable sales process. So for us, product market fit was when we were able to communicate this vision, this product that we're building to people. It resonated. That was like an early indicator. There is something here based on the research we've previously done. People then being able to take the tool, use it, and like achieve what we said they could achieve. The next step was, okay, they're going to take Trumpet, they're going to go build their very first pod, and they now feel confident enough to put it out into the open world. This brand new tool, it's pretty early on. The next step for us was to see, okay, we've got our users, our early adopters, are building pods. They're confident to share them with the world. We anticipated that buyers would engage with them. Is that happening? And yes, it was. So just being very eagle-eyed with metrics and how your product is being used, and asking for feedback. So what I'd also recommend, if anyone here is using a tool, is to go and check out Canny, CANNY.io. It means that you can embed in your product your own product roadmap where people can submit feature requests, bugs, integrations, and other people can see them as well, upvote them, and it helps you organize your product roadmap. We might think that the best new addition to Trumpet might be an integration with Zapier, but actually everyone is asking for DocuSign, so our assumptions might be wrong. And it's very difficult in the early days when a small team to be able to do all of the UX and UI research that you just haven't got team members for yet. So PMF also comes with that qualitative feedback and being as close to your early adopters as possible. Gavin, it's CANNY.io.
I love the sound of that tool. Sounds like every startup's dream, that takes away having to try to speak with every single customer and run so many surveys.
They have a startup plan, just what I remember. So usually it's like $400 per month, which is absurd. They do startup plan, which is $100 per month, and it's definitely worth every penny.
Okay, good to know. We'll try to link all of these tools that you mentioned in the description and in the blog post that we'll write afterwards too. Okay, one last question for me. Can we talk a little bit about burn, your burn rate? Have you done anything to reduce your burn? How do you look at that, especially given the current fundraising environment?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a very hot topic, and rightly so. I think when we raised our round, we did a financial forecasting model. We knew that years 3, 4, and 5 of the 5-year plan were kind of finger in the air, but year 1 and 2, we could be pretty confident on, based on hiring. That's your main burn, but also software and tooling. And it's been pretty accurate since then. We haven't tried to steer too off path with that. I would say that putting in like monthly reminders to review your licenses and tools, like every penny counts. Don't just think, oh, it's only 20 quid, like it's fine. It all adds up. And it also, it shows the team as well that you're building a business. It's not just throwing money at problems and it'll fix itself. And yeah, let's just get software. It's great. Like we'll kind of deal with that later. So yeah, we're always reviewing our tools monthly and licenses, being scrappy. Do you actually need that piece of software? Is there a free version? Is there a startup discount? Can I go and ask the founder network if they've got a discount? Can I ask my investor if they've got any partners or anything? So we're currently doing like SOC 2 ISO, which is the most fun you'll have in the world when you build your own sort of SaaS platform. And we've really pushed our investors, like, we are not experts in this. You need to go out and speak to, those Series A, B, C companies that you've helped.
Yeah.
How did they do it? Like, get us partners and get us help there, because it's not the fun stuff. You're not expected to be overnight compliance and security experts.
I think Vanta has a startup credit for that. I see their adverts everywhere. See the startup credit. It's a really good marketing tool. Okay, we're gonna take Rahul's question. Also, sorry if it looks like I'm glaring at you. The sun's right in my eyes right now, but I'm not, I swear. Okay, Rahul, your question, then I'm gonna take one from the chat.
Sure. Hey, Rory, thank you. Super useful information. In your experience, what is the lead time to start building the wait list for a direct-to-consumer application? Is it 3 months, 6 months? I know you are B2B focused, but do you have any view on B2C?
Yeah, we do to a certain extent. Like when we were building Trumpet, we wanted to have like a B2C brand in the world of B2B, but we were also looking at companies that had done great marketing, guerrilla marketing efforts in D2C. Because I think, business can learn a lot from that space. I think if you were to exceed 6 months, you'll have conversion issues, ideally around the 3-month mark. But what I would say is, don't spend too long deciding that. Like just taking action, getting the landing page there, getting the weekly email ready, creating FOMO buzz. That's the first big step. That might help you create a bigger wait list, which means you can raise more, which means that you don't need to wait 6 months and actually you need to just get it out there ASAP because people are desperate to get it. That's the sort of mindset you should be having. I think trying to follow how other companies have done it before and what's right and what's wrong, what will happen. Your business is so unique. So you can learn from others, but don't take it as like the holy grail. And also look, if they had to wait 6 months and then they don't sign up, they're not gone forever. Like, it's your job to create enough FOMO afterwards and enough attention and enough noise about what you've built that they come back round. And that'd be an awesome feeling. It's like they checked out early on, then they lost interest and you regained that interest as well.
But is that okay in the sense, because meaning if you start a little early and then if you need to delay a little bit, you go live and again you need to go back, and in your experience, what is the consumer behavior? Meaning, do they say, hey, I'm waiting for this for a bit longer, and or obviously you need to keep feeding them so that creates kind of like a work on its own to keep feeding them so that they're excited about your go live.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think people are really intrigued by the behind the scenes of a startup, and that's how you can keep them engaged. And also just being really honest, like, hey, I'm a founder. We've had a real tough month, but the team have worked super hard and I'm so excited to be able to share what we're building, but we're just not quite ready yet. I'm hopeful it's going to be 2 weeks time or whatever it might be. And I think taking that approach creates like a connection with that early community you're building, trust, but also excitement. Just keep playing on the FOMO card. I wouldn't worry too much. I think just actually getting it started, creating the wait list. What worked well for us that I forgot to share is we did have a referral campaign. We used viral loops for it. Viral loops is probably one of the better ones out there. It's not the cheapest, but it worked for us. And 18% of we ended up with around 4,000 waitlisters. 18% were from people on the waitlist referring other people. In D2C, you'll probably get a lot of that. It's probably a better community to get referrals from. So you can incentivize people to like jump up the wait list, get early access, jump on a call with you, that kind of thing. But I would just say get started Otherwise, you spend too much time deliberating. And yeah, nothing good is ever gained from being from indecision.
Well, thank you.
All right, I'm going to you kind of touched on this already, but Tim's question in the chat is, could founders think about using trumpet pods to engage prospective investors? Have you seen trumpet being used in this context, notwithstanding earlier commentary, VCs, blah, blah, blah. So main question, how can founders use trumpet to engage with investors?
Sure thing. So in Trumpet's absolute raw form, we help you build mini websites at scale that you can use for anything. Typically, they're used for sales and CS and like landing pages. We have lots of founders using them as data rooms, like a deal room. Here's our deck. Here's a quick Loom video of the product. Here's a bit of bio about me, a voice note introducing why I want to raise from yourselves, why I'd love to, have you guys on the journey. Logos, a few other things. So it's just helping you piece together everything that you would love to put in one email, but in just one link instead. So that's what it's used for. We also use it for investor updates. So in a Trumpet pod, you can have what we call pages, pretty much like tabs on a website. And we have December 2022, January 2023, February 2023, basically different pages for each monthly update. Our investors love it. It's one link. They can also see the progress over time. So yeah, that's also just one pod that continuously evolves. It's like a live space. So yeah, there are there are lots of founders and startups using it for that. You will always get a dinosaur investor who's like, I want this in a PDF, even though there's a PDF in the pod that you can add. But sometimes you've just got to play ball.
Right. Actually, I saw this asked too if we have a sign up link. Nick sent us over a sign up link for Trumpet a couple months ago. So we'll send that over to all the founders after this chat. Okay, Francisco, over to you.
Hi, Rory. Thanks for your time. My question is to touch base a little bit on the incentives. You talked about sending pods and sort of the referrals. This is something that we've been talking about. Just for context. We're creating a sports platform that we sell. So we're selling it to volume. So SNC, sports clubs and above, so local divisions, etc. So we want to go for volume instead of sort of going for one single sort of client and make all the money. And we've been considering thinking what other incentives can we do, provided our price is already low per se, to create sort of that viral where our coaches can refer to other coaches, because our coaches loved us. They absolutely love what we're doing, absolutely love the product. And when the product is sort of off from a day or a couple of hours, we get bombarded with emails like, what's going on with my solution? So they're on it constantly and use that to manage their clubs and their players and their teams, etc. How can we find opportunities to create sort of that sort of referral loop when price is not, there is not much low we can go in that for incentive? Yeah.
And are the referrals for, like, if I was a coach of a football team, for example, is it referrals of getting my team members on, or am I referring other clubs?
Other clubs. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
We sell to clubs, so it's sort of a B2B to C.
Yeah, got it. So on our side, we had 2, 5, and 10. So 2 referrals, 5, 10. For 2, you got early access. 5, you got 6 months of Trumpet free. 10, you got 12 months of Trumpet free. We actually also introduced Trumpet t-shirts. We've got a great supplier, super cheap, good quality, happy to recommend to anyone. They went down a treat. I'm blown away by how many people like good merch. Not, your big logo, everything you do everywhere, but just nice subtle stuff. So that actually went down really well. And like in the early days, you can arguably afford to like find that, those 5 or 10 clients who are absolute, what we call evangelists. They live and breathe what you've done. You've changed their life, and they'll go above and beyond to introduce you to other clubs. And just actually, I can't tell you what to offer them. It's a space I don't know well enough. I think you need to actually have this open, frank conversation, say that the product is delivering amazing value for you, and you probably can imagine it will do the same for lots of other coaches out there. What would have incentivized you to sign up quicker, or refer other people, and just like maybe come up with a list of options and seeing which ones like kind of sticks. But I think making it related to them getting more value out of your product is key, not just a bottle of champagne, but also becoming like an evangelist of your brand and things like that. So I wouldn't be able to give you the golden ticket answer there, unfortunately. But I'd say just I actually have the open conversation with your early adopters.
Got it. Okay, appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, Ajit.
Hi, Rory.
Hi.
I have a question regarding when you spoke to investors pre-product, how did you differentiate your product, especially because if they have not seen any, if they've not seen a product in action, how did you differentiate your product to those investors, especially who are not very well aware of the details of this space?
Yeah, you've got to paint a picture with a compelling story. So for us, there was an existing space. So we were basically taking lots of tools out there, things like DocSend. You spend lots of money per month to be told your PDF is being opened. In the world of sales, you have tools like HighSpot and Seismic, which are, in my opinion, fancy Google Drives, expensive tools to put lots of content into a link. So we were basically talking to investors of tools that they would have known, big SaaS names, and saying, think of this, think of that. They're broken because of X, Y, and Z, and that's where Trumpet comes in. That's the problem we're solving for buyers, but also for companies. This is what we're building and how we're different. And the other thing I'd say is be confident with competitors. Competition is a good thing. Don't pretend that you don't have competitors if you know that you do, and don't hide the competitors. Your investors will find them. That is their job, is to go and research the space, probably better than you ever will, to make sure that this investment is the right one. So I always say, invite the elephant into the room. You want competitors because they're going to help educate the market. There is no chance that you'll be able to ever service everyone. We won't be able to. And having competition is a healthy thing, keeps you on your toes, but actually being very, making sure that's a key part of your deck, and not just saying doing one of those charts where here's everything they do, we're way up here and way better. But just saying, here's what they do well, but here's how we're differentiated and how in our long-term vision, we're going to become the market leader. So for us, it was very much painting a picture of current offerings, how Trumpet's different. And also, yes, we have competition, but we love that we've got competition and we're very different from all of them. And this is the market they're going after. This is the problem they're solving. This is why we're going to come out on top. So I'd say that approach is important. But yeah, I think what Trumpet is building isn't necessarily completely groundbreaking, never been done before. Microsites exist. They've just been executed terribly. So there wasn't a huge education piece, but I can assume for lots of you, whether it is, anything around AI or, health tech or something a little bit more complicated than sort of sales software, I can imagine there's probably more education to take place in those introductory calls with investors. So just make sure it's as layman's terms as possible.
All right, Amir, you're up.
Hi. Just a quick question. Our business and our product is B2B, and our customers are big OEMs like Ford, JLR, and we are working in automotive domain. And our product is a software product with low volume but high value. So, and our team are mainly technical team, and we are very deep tech into the development of the software and the simulation and autonomous vehicle, etc., etc. Unfortunately, we don't have any sales team or any sales expertise. Do you think we need to have kind of in-house team for our sales and marketing, or can we outsource this to some companies to do this for us? And we are not a kind of in a situation that will face millions of customers and things like that. We have a very limited but very niche customers.
I would steer clear of the latter suggestion. I think outsourcing, it can really tarnish your brand. You're basically trusting people who aren't as invested in you and your business to go and sell it externally. So they're focused on volume. So they're trying to send as many emails a day as possible to just get you any sort of meeting. That meeting might not be qualified. It might not be with the end decision maker. And I've seen so many companies spend way too much money on these agencies and be burnt, basically. In the early days, it's all about founder-led sales. That also gives investors confidence that if the founder can sell this, and that's what we should be doing as founders, is selling this thing that we completely would we live and breathe. It's the problem that we faced, and like we're so invested in it. We have to be able to sell that to our earliest customers. And there comes a point, roughly the 10K MRR mark, they say, where you then start to expand the team and be able to take on more, because you won't be able to. And it depends on your ACV as well. ACV being annual contract value, like typical contract that you're selling. So I would say you need to be founder-led at the beginning. It gives trust in your team, but also trust in investors. And you then need to be able to justify the investment in that sales team. And when you do that, you want that sales team to live and breathe what you do as well. Going external, I think you'll come to regret it.
For companies, and if anyone wants to put a question in the chat, go for it. For companies that are selling into enterprise businesses, how do you suggest they figure out who's the right person in the team to talk to?
Yes. Who is the EB, executive buyer? Who's the final decision maker? I've written a couple of posts about selling into enterprise. If anyone is selling into enterprise, feel free to drop me a message on LinkedIn, and I'll share like a full breakdown. The thing with enterprise is it's very easy to get happy ears. Happy is like you speak to a person at, let's just take Barclays, for example, a big bank, speak to the first person at Barclays and they love what you do and they're getting excited and you're like, okay, this is a big opportunity. Honestly, the journey doesn't even start there. Multi-threading. So you need to be speaking to at least 5 people in an organization as big as Barclays. You need to start bringing in sales methodology, like BANT and Medic and a few others, like understanding, is this actually a problem? Do they hold budget? Who are the decision makers? What is the decision-making process? What does procurement look like? Do you have to become an approved supplier? When are they looking to have a solution by? Like, there's a million questions with enterprise. Not taking it for granted, that first conversation, like we have seen it time and time again, startups having like putting all their eggs in one basket. We're going to bring Barclays on as one client. Like that's all we need to get Series A or raise our next round. It's the big logo. They're going to spend lots of money with us. What happens if they don't convert? That's what you need to challenge yourself with when you're selling into enterprises. 1 or 2 or 3 opportunities isn't enough. You need to still keep building that top of funnel. They will probably want a pilot or a proof of concept and all these things. And it's going to require a lot of time investment from your side. They're going to start to want to see SOC 2, ISO, security, compliance, GDPR, all of that stuff. Have you got that in place already? So I think be careful with enterprise because you can get burnt by it. But like obviously the potential reward is 10, 100x that of going after SMBs. But yeah, I could talk about that all day, but feel free if you are selling into enterprise to ping me and I'll share some other insights as well.
We might try to grab those articles from you after this and we can send them out. David, you had a question.
Yeah, thank you. Rory, you mentioned to approach the investment process like a sales funnel. I was just wondering what the investment sales funnel looks like. So from your perspective, I know it's going to be different for everyone, but on the assumption you've got something compelling, how many investors do you email? How many responses do you get back? How many meetings do you get? How many of those turn into investments? How many end up as cash in the bank? So that sort of sales investment funnel from your perspective. And then when you're getting those meetings, I've heard different advice on this now. So at what point do you qualify someone as a time waster versus them just being someone you need to dance with a bit and pander to you a bit like a dinosaur that wants a PDF? Just talk a bit around those sort of 2 different areas for us, if you could please. And I'm about to go out to the angel investment network. So your timing is brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah. Very valid, interesting question. One thing I'd say to everyone is if you're going to raise VC is get some angel commitment first. That really did us a great deal of good, and make sure those angels are strategic. There's some incredible angels out there. Also, sorry, just whilst I remember, someone said a question earlier about getting early customers and stuff. And, if it's like a difficult solution you're selling, I'd recommend advisors, industry experts, really, really valuable. They can unlock doors that you would never imagine. We've got two amazing ones. I know lots of startups who've got one. So yeah, advisors are great. Sorry, to come back to your question. Nick and Andrew, exit founders, lots of validation there. Going again, they've sold a business for over $30 million. It didn't make it any easier for us, or didn't change it didn't mean that we got like complacent or anything like that. So we still probably spoke to email calls, everything total, near enough 100 investors. I think we had around about 60 that we spoke to properly. So it's a lot. That then whittled down to about 30 for like second calls. And then it was honestly, it went like 60, 30, roughly 15. And then there was sort of top 5 towards the end. We ended up having Lightbird.vc, who I'd recommend everyone looking at, very founder friendly from Switzerland. So Lightbird, Hatch, Anamkara. If you're selling into SMB, Anamkara are brilliant. And then also Triple Point. So we had 4 VCs, Lightbird with the lead, but we also had about 20 angels. I'd recommend looking into Odin to wrap them up into an SPV, because you want a nice, clean, tidy cap table. If you've got like 20 angels and like lots of VCs, it just delays due diligence and terms and all that stuff. But yeah, it starts big basically. But we did a lot. There's so like I've got lots of investor lists and tables that I'm happy to share with everyone as well afterwards. But doing your research is the most important part. Like there's no point going like emailing, I don't know, Index if you're raising pre-seed, for example. Like it's just a waste of your time and their time. And quite often you will get big tier 1 VCs saying, oh yeah, let's have a meeting. They're also building their sales funnel. So VC, they have meetings day in, day out with all sorts of startups. So just be respectful of your time and understand, like, is this actually a fit? Yeah.
So
I know,
you qualified that quite well then, in terms of to get 60 back from that first 100. It has to, there's no point. Mine's tech, and my brother sent me, oh, here's a deep tech investor. He used to play at our club. And I'm like, no, he's deep tech. He won't be interested. But just let him know as an ex-club mate, and he might know someone who is. So I didn't even speak to him. So you'd say it's worth screening to that extent.
Yeah. You could spend 2 weeks doing your research, like getting like the whole lay of the land, who you can get referrals into, which startups are like a similar space to you, and what VCs and angels they've got invested in them, and then go for like hit go. And so basically tee yourself up.
Yeah, because you said about condensing your meetings as well, and that's like a time efficient approach. From those early ones you speak to, do you say we're doing meetings in 3 weeks' time? Would they be okay? Is that an okay thing to do?
Yeah,
or,
I would.
Or do you strike while the iron's hot? Because
yeah, I'd say like spend 2 weeks of research, getting yourself in like ready to go and raise. Have your data room ready, whether it's a Trumpet pod or a Google Drive with everything, your financial forecast, your deck, your everything like that, and then basically know that for the next minimum 2 to 4 weeks, you're going to be on back-to-back investor meetings. That's how I treat it. And it's also your job to create FOMO. Like when you get to the end of that meeting, say, does the second meeting make sense here? Like, what are your thoughts? I know you're gonna have to go away and sort of digest as a team, but we've got commitment already. I'm back to back this week with investor meetings. Like, I would love to squeeze you in, but where's your head at? And it's okay if it's a no. Just having that, like, give them the opportunity to say it's not a fit, rather than you kind of waiting to get their answer and things like that. Also, I noticed someone put in the chat, like S&B, my comment on that. Anamkara, Anamcara. They're one of our investors. You'll find them on our website, on the About Us page, but they're very focused on SaaS companies selling into S&B.
Just before I move on, at what point do you move on with an investor? So at what point is someone, because I had a meeting I was referred to someone, and I was like, oh my God, this is exciting. I'm pitching the idea to an investor, and they weren't even an investor. I was kind of frustrated, and it would have just been good but that would have been screened out in my research had I done that a while ago. At what point what's your balance, or is it an intuitive instinct thing? Like, at what point do you go, they're just sort of fishing for information, and aside from the VC thing, who's building their future pipeline? At what point are you talking to an angel investor and you go, they're in or they're out, or is it just with the question that you said, look, what would it take to get you to a second meeting? What would, do you just qualify it that way?
Yeah, try to at the end of a call, but also if you finish the call and you've spoken to them via email, like you've set up the call and then they don't respond after the call, just be honest. Investors live on their phones. They live to, like, they're looking for the next hot startup. If they're actually excited, they will be basically pushing for a second call ASAP. Like we had some where we had a first, second, third call within 3 days. And that was like with their their investor, then their wider committee, and then some of the partners of the fund. It can be spun around very quick if they know it's pre-seed, it's seed, it's moving fast, and there's other people interested. So it's easier said than done, but just like respect your own time. And it's not easy letting go and thinking, oh, but what if? They'll come back. It's your job to go and speak to other investors, create excitement elsewhere. They'll probably catch wind and think, oh, maybe we've made a mistake here, we should revisit. So like, just have belief in your product, conviction, and that, look how many investors we spoke to and where Trumpet is today. Like there's loads who said that it's rubbish and like we don't like it and there's not a market for this and all that kind of stuff. Like it's not a fun journey, but you'll build that thick skin, and this is what sales is about. So yeah.
It is at the end. Thanks, Rory.
We're going to take one last quick question from Leonie. Leonie, you might need to come on and add a bit of additional context to this. It was can you do that with existing investors, like with an angel that backed the company 1 to 2 years ago?
Yeah, I was meaning about the SPV, the special purpose vehicle. If it's possible to do that with existing investors, yeah, because it wasn't something that I covered. I have a bunch of angel investors that backed the company a few years ago, and I was just wondering if it's something that we can do later on. So for the next round, for starting the next round. Yeah,
I'm very confident that you can, but don't take my word for yeah, I'm not 100% sure, but fortunately Anthony has just joined.
I was just about to say. Perfect timing.
Yeah.
Hello.
Okay, let's Rory, we'll wrap up your session quick, and Anthony, we'll start you guys. I just have to stop and restart the YouTube video, but Rory, thank you so much for joining us. Everyone will send out the Trumpet link afterwards. But I chatted with Nick at an event earlier, and he spoke so highly of you. Your investor Seb was here last week and said similar words. So thanks so much for joining us.
No, it's a pleasure. Thanks everyone. Yeah, if you've got questions,